The Bay of Pigs invasion. It sounds like a rejected Indiana Jones sequel, but it was a disaster. In 1961, the US tried to overthrow Fidel Castro in Cuba. They failed spectacularly. This pushed Cuba closer to the Soviet Union. Remember the domino theory? The US was terrified of communism spreading, a communist Cuba right on their doorstep. Unacceptable. This fear led to the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. The Soviets put nuclear missiles in Cuba. The world held its breath. Nuclear war seemed inevitable. Luckily, cooler heads prevailed. But the message was clear: don't mess with superpowers in their backyards. The US had its reasons, however misguided. They saw Castro's communist government as a threat. They feared Soviet influence in the Western Hemisphere. These were legitimate security concerns, at least in their eyes, but the way they handled it, about as subtle as a Molotov cocktail in a library. Fast forward to 2022, Russia invades Ukraine. Déjà vu, anyone? Russia's motives. A toxic cocktail of historical grievances, paranoia about NATO expansion, and a desire to reclaim what they see as their lost territory. Sound familiar? It should. Replace Russia with the US, Ukraine with Cuba, and NATO expansion with the spread of communism. Suddenly, the historical parallels are impossible to ignore. The global response to Russia's invasion has been swift and harsh. Sanctions, condemnation, and military aid for Ukraine. The world learned a lesson from the Cold War, right? Well, sort of. While everyone is quick to denounce Russia's actions, there's a certain amnesia about the US's own history of interventionism. Remember the Bay of Pigs? Or how about Vietnam? Or Iraq? Yeah, those happen. Here's the thing about history. It's written by the victors. And the victors don't like to dwell on their mistakes. So we end up with this selective memory in international politics. The US gets to be the champion of democracy, while Russia is the big bad wolf. Never mind that the US has toppled governments and interfered in elections all over the world. But here's where things get even more complicated. The US never wanted to annex Cuba. They wanted to control it, yes, but not absorb it. Russia, on the other hand, claims Ukraine as its own. They're not just trying to influence it, they're trying to erase it. This distinction is crucial. It speaks to the intent behind the actions, and intent matters, even if the end result is the same: suffering, destruction, and the loss of innocent lives. So what's the lesson here? Can we break free from this cycle of violence and repetition? The answer, my friends, is not a simple one. It requires acknowledging our own hypocrisy. It means learning from history, even the uncomfortable parts. It means holding all actors accountable, not just the ones who are easy to demonize. Until we do that, we're doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past, over and over again. And trust me, the sequels are never as good as the originals.